Ganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Today I want to discuss about moksha, that too in Nammalwar's point of view. Let us start with prayer. Shri Shaile Sataya Patram Shri Bhaktya Gunarnavam Yatindra Pravanam Vande Ramyaja Mataram Munim. We have to know various aspects like the greatness of Tiruvalmozhi and temple worship Tiruvalmozhi, social functions, and the Nammalwar's prescription of moksha. Let us elaboratedly discuss the greatness of Tiruvalmozhi. The Vedic texts have in several places proclaimed the glory of Tiruvalmozhi. In the first prasa of Kataka portion of Taittiriya Upanishad comes the episode of Indra challenging sage Bharadwaja, of the later mastering the Vedas, even if his span of life were extended beyond the tenure of 300 years already granted to him. The episode ends up with the greatly disappointed Bharadwaja ultimately attained salvation, means moksha, liberation, whatever it's called, through the study of Tiruvalmozhi taught to him by Indra. Even as Purusha Sukta is preeminent among Vedas, Tiruvalmozhi stands foremost among the Divya Prabandha. Divya Prabandham is a sort of songs or stotras towards Lord Sriman Narayana, which consist of 4,000 in numbers. That's why it is called Nalayira Divya Prabandham. Even as Sanskrit Vedas have several roots, the Sahasra Shakha Dravida Vedas have also their roots. Each stanza of Tiruvalmozhi being treated as a Shakha. Acharya Nathamuni, in his yogic comprehension of Nammalwar, rightly saw the Savita, mean the sun god, in him and extolled him as Yadgo Sahasram Apahanti. Meaning is like this: the sun beaming through the 1,000 rays of Tiruvalmozhi, which dispelled the darkness prevailing among people. Nammalwar's affluence attracted the elderly Madhura Kavi, one of the Alvar, who was touring in the far north. Acharya Nambillai, the greatest discourser of all times on Nammalwar's Tiruvalmozhi, states as follows: hundreds and thousands of poets have, no doubt, come into this world after Nammalwar, and yet, brushing aside their performance as nothing better than the roaring of the sea. If people stick to the hymns of Nammalwar with rapturous delight, it is because of the upsurge of devotion overflowing its continent through hymns of unparalleled sweetness. Even Ramanuja, founder of Visishtadvaita, has been acclaimed as the foster mother who nourished the Divya Prabandha, the Nalayira Divya Prabandha, made admirable use of Tiruvaimozhi and looked upon it as a sure and certain guide in resolving many as abstruse point while writing his commentary Sri Bhashya on the Brahma Sutra. Therefore, he issued a mandate, as it were, in the last of his 9 works of Nitya Grantha, dissipating the daily routine to be followed by the devout, the recitation of the hymns of Alvars should form an integral part of the daily worship. Which should form an integral part of the daily worship or the worship which should otherwise fruitless and insipid. But Tiruvaimozhi is celebrated as Samaveda among the 3 Vedas and additionally considered to explain the Dvaya Mantra. The opening song of Tiruvaimozhi indicates Artha Panchakam. What is Artha Panchakam? Especially in Vaishnava community, it must be followed each and every seer or acharya or any Vaishnavite. Artha Panchakam. He who knows about it, maybe he is having knowledge in Vaishnavism. So let us find out what is Artha Panchakam. First, Paraswarupam. Number, Atmaswarupam. Third, Phalaswarupam. Fourth, Upayaswarupam. Fifth, Virodhiswarupam. See, the 5. This is called Artha Panchakam. Tiruvaimozhi and temple worship. In Srirangam, Lord Ranganatha, after hearing the hymns of Shatagopa, titled him as Nammalwar, meaning of our Alvar. Nammalwar, our Alvar. During the days of Acharya Manavada Mamunigal, Lord Namberumal, with his concerts, leaving aside all the daily and seasonable festivals, listened to the early commentary of Tiruvaimozhi for 1 full year. Guru Parampara records that as a part of reforms, Ramanuja included the chanting of hymns of Divya Prabandham. Selected chapters of Tiruvaimozhi called Koil Tiruvaimozhi. That means those hymns are recited in Koil, means temple. At the completion of Pagal Pattu and Ira Pattu festivals, that means during 10 days, during 10 nights, Ira Pattu. On the concluding day, all the 1000 verses of Tiruvaimozhi are recited before the Lord Ranganatha or Sriman Narayana, seated with his consorts on the Vaikunta Ekadasi day, when the gates of Paramapada are opened, the Lord gives darshan to Nammalwar and honor him with garlands. Unlike the other hymns of Divya Prabandham, the Tiruvazhumozhi is accorded the special status of being chanted only inside the temple or in homes, when the deity is taken out of the streets for ceremonial procession by the Parayana Goshti. Tiruvazhumozhi is a social functions. In Sri Vaishnava community, before the commencement of funeral ceremonies, in case of death to the members, when the body is washed and caste marks are applied, at least 100 stanzas of Tiruvazhumozhi are chanted. Why? This is done to indicate the longing of the soul to reach the lotus feet of Lord. Similarly, at the conclusion of the ceremonies, on the 13th day, 1,000 hymns of Tiruvazhumozhi are chanted to signify the liberation of the soul. The liberation of the soul is most important in Vaishnavism. Tiruvazhumozhi acts a tool. Hence, it may be noted that Tiruvazhumozhi has become a part of temple worship as well as journey of the soul. The Nammalwar's prescription on moksha. Tiruvazhumozhi consists of 11 verses in all decades. The decade 2.7 Keshavan Tamar alone has 13 verses. Thus, the total of the verses of Tiruvazhumozhi accounts to the 1102 verses. A humble attempt has been made in the following pages to study, consolidated and present the Phalashruti, the fruit of recitation of each decade of Tiruvazhumozhi. We could notice that in 88 decades, consisting of the 970 verses, in the concluding verse of each decade, Nammalwar speaks of the attainment of moksha as the benefit of recitation. The recitation is our action, and the God's grace will be the automatic reaction. One may not recite surely to please the Lord. Nammalwar declares that those who master the decade will lead a good home harmoniously with their wives and children, all wedded to Bhagavata Seshatva, service to the devotees of the Lord as the ultimate goal, especially in Sri Vaishnavism. They will be made Sri Vaishnava in this world, assured of God's enjoyment equal to the Nityasuris in this world of birth and death, and will reach Paramapada Vaikuntha, rising above the devas and cut asunder the bonds of the birth-death cycle. Now let us see. Nammalwar's prescription below. Satagopan as Paramapada. In the earlier verse, the Alvar has suggested that one should unite himself with the Lord Narayana's feet by meditating on Ashtakshari mantra. What is Ashtakshari mantra? Om Namo Narayanaya. This is called Ashtakshari mantra. 8 syllable, 8 lettered mantra. Anyone who masters the decade, Pattudayarku, will reach Paramapada, rising above the devas and cut asunder the bonds of the birth-death cycle. Janana Marana Chakra. The one who recites those 10 verses of decade, Ancharaya, sung by Shatagopan with charm, will be vouchsafed by the Lord of 7 worlds, who concedes to the devotees, commensurate with his own desire, the bliss of service in Paramapada. The mastery over the decade, Valavil, will ensure unbroken union with Lord. The decade, Parivatil, is sure to make anyone who masters it free from the cycle of births and deaths. The decade, Paravityar, is capable for the persons who master it by removing all diseases, those of the body and the mind, passionate attachment to mean pleasure, which are all called diseases, like in hindering one's progress towards the realization of God. The decade Ivayum Avayum, sung by Shatagopan, composed as a result of the enjoyment of this ascent to the Lord, is a unique one. Whosoever recites it, the Lord will positively place his feet on his head permanently. The decade Porumanil will offer effective learning that helps one to secure salvation. To those who master it with full understanding of the meanings and in agreement with the sentiments expressed, the decade Vayunturai, sure to secure for whosoever masters it a guaranteed union with the Lord of Vaikuntha, surely and certainly. Those who master the decade Tinnan Vitu are sure to be freed of all blemishes and is assured of an inseparable union with Lord Nammalwar observes that the decade Unilaval, describing his experience of bliss with the Lord, will ensure to whosoever master it a similar bliss of godly experience, along with groups of the Lord's devotees and Nitya Suris. The decade Atiyati will ensure for the master of these verses sweet service at the Lord's feet in Sri Vaikuntha. Whosoever masters the decade Antamattanbu will be assured of Vaikuntha and the company of congregation of devotees. The decade Vaikuntha, if sung with good music, will ensure for the persons becoming Keshava Sadiyar. The 12 verses of Keshavartamar is sure to take those who master them to the feet of the great benefactor that he is. Those who master the decade Anaivat are sure of enjoying the bliss of Paramapada, well seated there and at God's leisure. The verses of decade Yamma Vitru will secure Paramapada of spotless purity to whomsoever who master them. The verses of decade Killer Oki will confer on whosoever masters them a unique knowledge and transport him to the feet of the Lord, who is known for his mercy. Mastery over the 10 verses of decade Muttit Koti ensures the termination of samsara. The decade Munnir Nalam will guarantee deliverance from bondage to the world life and death to whomsoever master it. Those who master the decade Olivil column will be vouchsafed a life to go close to the Lord of Tiruvengadam, serve him all the time without a gap, without a flaw, with no end in mind except the service of the Lord, that the whole world will adore and admire. Those who master the decade Pukalum Nal will be blessed with uninterrupted bliss of service to the Lord in this world, about which Nitya Suris will be admiring beings enjoying in this lower world. All that is destined to be enjoyed only in Sri Vaikuntha. The decade Moyam Mandram will surely turn to ashes to sins of those who master it. Those who master the decade Palanai will be very good company to Nitya Suris. To those who master the decade Kovai Vayal of faultless and truthful statements will be assured. The unique affluence called Vaishnavashri that cannot be reckoned in terms of worldly goods and the bliss of Vaikuntha later. Those who learn, master, and decide more as a mode of pleasure, enjoyment than a means for any other goal, the decade Mannai Irittu will enjoy all prosperous Vaikuntha with all acts wiped away and will sit crowned in a throne in a kingdom of pious masters the decade. The decade Iralum would help those who master it to reach casting of the hard, unyielding samsara. The decade Nannathar, in race of his feet, will transport the readers to the feet, whereafter they will ever enjoy bliss, become one with the Lord's feet. The decade Ondrum Tevum will secure the inversible pleasure of Vaikuntha. Whosoever resides with mental relish, the decade Kayar, will be surely destined to live in the blessed company of Sri Vaishnavas here for long before reaching the Lord's abode. The decade Poliga will remove the ills of heart of those who master it. The commentators have listed out the ills of the hearts as resorting to other demigods. Number 2, not having pratipatti to Sri Vaishnavas. 3, considering Sri Vaishnavas in par with others. 4, considering that the association with non-Sri Vaishnavas is not wrong, and resorting to the Lord for other aspirations or goals. The decade Tinellam Tunzi will confer a passion of impatience on seeing crazy devotees, and what doubt can there be in the matter of their reaching Vaikuntha? Those who can sing the decade Norra Nombu with mental identification are sure to be very dear to Nityasuris. The decade Aravamude will secure to whomsoever mastering it, so as to wipe out their spiritual enjoyability to the Lord and Vaishnavas. Those who master the decade Manne Noku shall be regarded as high as and elevated, even though the birth in this world denotes a certain degree of ignominy. In their case, birth does not count as a demerit because they have acquired an overwhelming great merit. The decade Piranduvarum ensures permanent Vaikuntha stay to those who master it. Those who sing the decade Vaikal Punkalivai with real relish will become dear to Vaishnavas as Manmada to lustful damsels. Those who master the holy decade in praise of Krishna, Kuravai Eisir Votru, are qualified to become faultless Krishna devotees, and it confirms. The decade Malukku Vaya Malanta in praise of the Lord of Tiruvengadam will assure to anyone mastering it a certain guaranteed enjoyment with naturally beautiful Nityasuris in Sri Vaikuntha. The decade Unnum Soru in praise of Tirukkolur will give to anyone who master it with a discerning identification of oneself with the content of each verse, a unique privilege that Sri Vaikunta would be according to his disciple. He can order it about. The decade Nirai Nilanai will make those who master it the right type of Bhagavatar to the one all helpful Lord. Nammalwar describes that the muktas welcomed and accepted by the Devis and the Lord, joined by the Lord's fold. This decade, Kal Vishumbu, will enable one to enjoy the Lord's auspicious qualities continuously. The decade Muniye Namakane, Muniye Nammakane, sung in Parabhakti, will guarantee to anyone who masters it the blessings of being born as Nitya Suri's equal. श्रेयकांताय कल्याण निधे निधे ध्राम श्री वेंकट निवासाय श्रीनिवासाय मंगलम मंगलाशासनवरैर्मदाचार्य प्रोगमैः सर्वैश्च पूर्वैराचार्यैः सत्कृतायास्तु मंगलम्.